morning, church. Hoping you're having a good start to your day. Appreciate you joining us and tuning into our devotionals online here on YouTube. And I think maybe this is available on Facebook as well, but appreciate you joining in. I apologize for yesterday, us not being able to get a broadcast out. We've been traveling over the last week and getting down to see our son Brian and his wife and their new baby. And she's just cute as a button and just perfect little baby girl. And it was such a blessing to see her. Appreciate different ones praying for us as we've been going. We got in late last night and we weren't able to get our devotional up for this morning, or for last night I should say, coming into this morning. And so for yesterday when you were trying to tune in for the devotional and it wasn't available, I apologize for that. But we're trying to get back to normal, get back to our regular routines, and have some things available for you. So I appreciate you tuning in and checking out our devotional as we're going through the book of Philippians, looking at the joy of the Lord. And we've been looking at the Apostle Paul as he's been encouraging this church from a prison cell and trying to get them to focus on the Lord. And chapter 2 here, he's been talking about having a submissive mind, dealing with our relational issues that we have with people, and how people can certainly be frustrating on a lot of different levels, not just family or strangers or coworkers or different things like that, but just in general, having a mind of humility is just a challenge. And Paul has come at this from a couple different ways. And we said from the beginning in this chapter that Paul uses 4 different examples to help us kind of get our mind around what he's talking about of having a submissive mind. We started off talking about Jesus Christ being the greatest example. Of course he is. And then he kind of moved on to himself as an example. And he talked about a lot of different nuances of the ins and outs of the Christian life, and his own willingness and his sacrifice and being willing to endure whatever was needed in order to fulfill God's will for his life. And then he's going to move on to some new 2 other examples of Timothy and Epaphras, as they are other servants that God used. And he's going to do this for a number of reasons. For one, it'd be easy for the readers of this letter to look and say, well, I know Jesus is our example, but I'll never be like Christ. I'll never be perfect. I'll never hit that goal. And kind of use as an excuse of, well, I can't get there, so why even try? Or maybe even look at the Apostle Paul as his example and say, yeah, Paul's a great example as well, but I'm not an apostle, and I can't live like that. And God gave him special abilities that he hasn't given me, and maybe that would become an excuse for why not to have this submissive mind he's encouraging them to have. He moves on to 2 ordinary saints that are just faithful to serve the Lord in the capacities God gave them, and that's Timothy and Epaphras. And they are Epaphroditus, I should say, and they serve as great examples to us as to just regular people that just trying to live their lives, trying to do what God's called them to do in the capacities He's called them to do. And you get to see that even they are functioning in this realm that He's encouraging the church to be in, having a mind of humility, having a submissive mind. And the emphasis here, though, is going to be a very different emphasis of humility that's not talked about a whole lot. And it's the emphasis of caring for other people. Now, you might not think that those two go together, humility and caring for others, but when you stop and think about it, they really do, because we're very much geared as a selfish society. I mean, society really is just structured around the individual and thinking for me, taking care of me, and it's very easy to slip into just a habit of I only take care of me and I don't see anybody else around me, and then I completely miss what God's trying to do through my life and into the lives of others. And it takes a level of humility to look at the plight of other people and the hardships that they're suffering, going through, for you to be able to step into those hardships. I remember years ago being in the Dominican and going to a propane station. Getting your propane filled up was a very common thing down there. And I was at a propane station and getting my tanks filled for my house. And I had stepped across a particular safety line that they painted on the ground. And the attendant he didn't go nuts, but he just said, hey, you need to back up, stay behind that line there. I was like, okay, and backed up. And he said, let me show you why. He said, there's very dangerous accidents can happen. And he pulled out his cell phone and he showed me a little video that a buddy of his from another station had sent to him. And he's showing me this video, and on the video, it's the aftermath of an accident that took place at one of these propane stations, where the head of the propane tank broke off. It severed during the fill, and the piece whipped around and it hit the attendant's, or another man, I don't know if it was an attendant, but another man's arm, and hit him in the arm, and it severed his arm. And the man was laying on the ground and he's bleeding everywhere. And all around him were people just taking pictures, taking videos. And even the person from whom the guy received that video was just taking a video of it. And I'm watching this and kind of a bit of horror. And he's showing me, saying, isn't that bad? You got to be careful, and you don't want to cross that line. Things like this can happen. I understand where he was going with that. He wanted me to be safe. And I asked him, in the conversation, I said, so what happened to that guy? He said, oh, he died. And I said, nobody helped him? He said, no, nobody helped him. I remember thinking, how heartless. Here's a guy just wallowing in his own blood, dying from his injuries, and people are more concerned to get pictures and videos to put on social media than they were to actually help the guy to get medical attention so he didn't die. And I thought, man, what a cold, heartless world. But that's the reality of the world we live in. And for people to step in to the needs of other people, it really does require a level of godly thinking and humility to step out of your own cares, your own wants, maybe even be inconvenienced in order to help people. It takes a level of caring. And there's a reason why the Lord gave us the parable of the Good Samaritan. It's because it's rare. It doesn't happen often. We pass by people all the time and don't care about their plights. But the passage we want to look at today, looking at primarily Timothy today, and looking at the way he cared for Paul, really speaks volumes. I'll be honest, this is a very challenging section to me when I think about Timothy and his testimony that he had, that Paul mentions here. In Philippians chapter 2, verses 19 through 24 is really the section we'll look at for this morning. It says, but I trust in the Lord Jesus to send Timotheus shortly unto you. And listen to the description he gives about Timothy. He says that I also may be of good comfort when I know your state. That is, I'm sending Timothy to you guys to find out how you're doing, and then Timothy's going to come back and tell me how things are. And Paul says, I'm really anxious to hear how things are going. And I'm trusting Timothy to go to you to get that information to come back to me with it. Verse 20, he says, for I have no man like-minded who will naturally care for your state. He says, I don't trust anybody with this task like I trust Timothy. Timothy, I know, will get this job done because he's a caring person, and he knows that this is not just a menial task. He's gonna pay special attention to get this done, because I know that this is more than just a job for him. This is more than just an errand that I'm sending him on. He actually cares for you too. And he's saying Timothy has a heart for people. And that spoke volumes for the Apostle Paul. And he goes on, he says, for all seek their own, not the things which are Jesus Christ's. He says, the average person, they just care about themselves. Now, it's easy to stop and think, man, the day in which we live. But this is not a new problem. Selfishness and people just thinking about number one, it's just in human nature. It goes all the way back to Adam and Eve. This is not a 21st century issue. This is not a first culture issue, or a third culture, a third world issue, or a first world issue. This is humanity. And this is the problem that even Apostle Paul faced. He says, there's nobody who cares about anybody. Timothy stands out because he's different. He actually has a heart for people. And he's a humble guy. He truly has a heart and a mind of humility, to where he's willing to set aside his own wants, his own desires, and care for somebody else. That's rare. It's rare to find people like that. We get so caught up in our own needs, our own burdens, our own wants, and it's very easy to forget about what's going on with other people. But he says there, for all seek their own, not the things which are Jesus Christ's. But ye know the proof of him, that as a son with the Father, he hath served with me in the gospel. He says, the proof there is, you know the proof. You've seen this guy. You've seen him in action. He's not just words. He's actions. You've watched as he's served. You've watched as he's cared for different ones. You've watched as he's cared for you. Now, Timothy would eventually become the pastor of Ephesus, and I think there's a big reason for this. One, he was faithful to serve alongside the Apostle Paul, and he endured a lot of the things that Paul went through. He was willing to be brought up under Paul and willing to follow Paul's leadership. He was willing to learn from Paul, which takes humility, to not think you know everything. It's easy as a young person to think, yeah, the old boomers, they don't know what they're talking about. We got all the answers. We're not going to listen. Timothy wasn't like that. Timothy was willing to listen. He was willing to learn. He was willing to grow. He knew that he didn't know everything. And so it took years of grooming and training and being in the ministry alongside of Paul for him to learn those different things. And he was willing to go the extra mile. He was willing to do these different things. But not only was he a follower and a servant, but he was humble enough and he cared enough for other people. He really had a pastor's heart. He had a heart for people, and he cared for people. It was more than just a job. People that are in the ministry that view ministry as just a job, a lot of times end up hurting other people. Because if you don't have a heart for people, to some extent, eventually you're going to treat people like it's just a job, like they're employees or they're just a nuisance and they're a problem. It really is a privilege to be able to serve the Lord, to be able to help people in their burdens and in their hardships. And Timothy had a pastor's heart, and he would eventually take over the church of Ephesus for the Apostle Paul. But he also helped in other churches, and Paul entrusted him with different tasks because he knew that Timothy had a heart for serving. He had a heart to help other people, and Paul would send him to different places to carry out different tasks, and he's going to send him back to Philippi and get the report from them to see how they're doing, because he wanted to know what was going on. Epaphroditus was going to be another one that Paul was going to send along with him. But he says there, but you know the proof of him, that as a son with the Father he hath served with me in the gospel. Him therefore I hope to send presently, so soon as I shall see how it will go with me. And so Paul's anxious to hear about these Philippians. He's anxious to hear about how he's going, how things are going in their church, and he could trust Timothy to get the job done. How are you in your service? How do you view things in your service? How do you view people? It's easy to let people frustrate you. We all battle that. We all battle frustrations. We all battle people getting under our skin. It really takes a level of humility to see past that and to try to have a burden and a heart for the needs of other people. And so what a challenge that is. It challenges me. I hope it challenges you. And so whatever you're going to do today, whether it's to work, school, running errands, taking care of things around the house, whatever it is you have to take care of, try to look for the needs of other people. Try to step back from your own things that you've got going on. We all have things. And try to look at the needs of other people and ask the Lord to give you a heart for the needs of other people. If you don't have one, you say, Pastor, I just don't have that. Well, ask the Lord to give it to you. God wants to share his burden with us. If we delight ourselves in the things of God, he'll give us the desires of our hearts. And I think a big part of that is he puts his desires in us. And one of those desires is a desire to help others. And so certainly the Lord can do that for us. And so I want to challenge you today, wherever you're going, what you're doing, to look for opportunities to step into the needs of other people. God can use you in a great way. And I hope you'll have that characteristic that Timothy had. It challenges me. I hope it'll challenge you. I hope you'll join us tomorrow for our next devotional. And may God richly bless you.